Welcome back to our little mini workshop series. Today we are moving to the scene level. So we are going to talk about those individual building blocks that build out our entire book, which are, of course, our scenes. I think that scene work is one of the most misunderstood elements of craft because we either think too much about it and then we forget how they all kind of work together like building blocks inside of your book, or we forget to think about it. So I want to kind of put a little intentionality out into this today because every single scene in your novel has a job to do. And if a scene doesn't have a job, it's not moving your story forward, it's just taking up space. So today we're going to learn how to give every scene kind of a specific goal or mission. So hello again. My name is Bekah Brinkmeier. I am an author coach here at AutoCrit, and welcome to our mini workshop series for World Storytelling Day. I am thrilled to have you, and let's talk about scene goals. All right, what the heck is a scene goal exactly? At its simplest, a scene goal is what your protagonist wants to achieve within the next few pages. That is distinct from what your overall story goal is, like, you're going to defeat the villain. Instead, these are more like micro goals, right? They are the stepping stones required to reach the end. A goal can be as small as obtaining a phone number, okay, or convincing the guard to open the gate or to look the other way while they sneak in. It could be finding a moment of peace to think. Whatever it is, without a micro goal, your characters are just talking. With one, they are pursuing. A scene without a goal is a scene without a pulse. All right, so why do scenes fall flat? Honestly, it's because they're probably unfocused. That has nothing to do with the actual quality of the writing. They could be written beautifully, but if they are not focused, then you kind of get that like creeping nothing's happening sensation, and you're just watching characters like wander aimlessly through a setting, or maybe they're very passively reacting to events. There's no reason why we should be caring. So if a scene can be removed without breaking the story, it probably lacks a strong goal. And readers can kind of get bored with this kind of situation. Even if they can't identify exactly why, if you have a whole section or maybe you have a whole chapter that feels very much like filler, your scenes are wandering aimlessly, you don't have a goal, your readers are going to check out. That engagement factor is going to decrease. All right. So, at the most fundamental level, a scene exists because your character is trying to achieve something. They want something. Effective scenes are driven kind of by a specific cycle that goes goal, conflict, outcome. However, your job as a writer isn't just to have, a random goal. It needs to make that goal clear. It needs to be specific, and it also needs to be active. This shift in focus transforms this like random sequence of events into a compelling story. And that is what we ultimately want. So, what is this scene goal? It has a strong scene goal has to have three things. It needs to be immediate, so it's happening right now. It needs to be specific, which is measurable, and active, which means it is requiring something, some action to happen. We want to move away from the vague desires like she wants happiness, and towards something actionable like she wants him to sign the divorce papers today. You know, a great goal is something that we could actually kind of watch happen on the page. Next, we have the scene question and narrative hooks. So every scene should pose a question in the reader's mind. This is usually like, will the protagonist achieve blank? By posing this question early in the scene, you're creating a narrative hook that keeps the reader turning pages to find the answer. The answer shouldn't be revealed until the very end of the scene. So, if you are finding that your scenes are trailing off or losing focus, I want you to go back to that scene question. If that question is answered too early, the reader has absolutely no reason to finish the chapter, right? Why are they? We're back to wandering aimlessly. If the goal has been accomplished, then what are these other paragraphs about? So, just like your overall story, scene goals work best when they are layered. We have external goals, which are the physical tasks of what you are accomplishing. Maybe that's reaching the city, right? They're on a journey. Maybe that's acquiring the badge in order to get into the building. We have our internal goals, which are the emotional state the character is seeking. They are seeking validation, maybe. Maybe they're hiding a shameful secret, whatever it is. The most compelling scenes, though, occur when these two are at odds. So, for example, a character might externally want to win the argument. Okay, they are going to win. However, internally, they just want to be liked. So this friction between these two things, it's going to create immediate depth and subtext without the need for heavy exposition. So I want to think about the domino effect. So I want you to think of your scenes like a row of falling dominoes. I don't know if anyone else likes to do that. My kids really enjoy it where you set them all up and you get to knock them down and you can make designs and things like that. So the domino effect is going to be cause and effect storytelling essentially. So the character wants something, which is your goal. Something blocks them, which is your obstacle, and then the result changes the situation, which is outcome. And that outcome naturally creates the next goal. So this is a circle. It is repeating itself. This daisy chain creates cause and effect storytelling. When the resolution of one scene immediately triggers the necessity of the next, your pacing suddenly becomes unput downable. We have to keep going. We have to know what's going to happen next. I love this as a storytelling technique. You might be asking, that's great, but I have no idea what my scene goals could be. And that's very fair. Sometimes if we're not used to thinking about it like this, it can feel kind of overwhelming to try to even begin to work this out. So here are some types of scene goals. This is not an exhaustive list, of course. But I want to reassure you that goals do not have to be a life or death or like explosion type goal. Instead, I just want you to focus on selecting something that has some meaning to it. Maybe your character wants to get information. They want to retrieve an object. Maybe they're really working hard to change someone's mind or hide something or even prove something. Even quiet scenes still need some kind of intention. A conversation scene still has a goal. Maybe it's persuasion. Maybe it's concealment. Maybe they're lying about where they were to the detective. Oh, it wasn't me. I could never have been part of this murder that was found at the tea shop. I was playing bunco with these four people. You know, there's needs to be, if there's no intention, the dialogue there is just simply filler. Now we're just having a conversation about the weather. Now we're just having a conversation about what we had to eat the last day. This is not moving our plot forward. It's not serving our scene goals. So that brings me to the question that people often have of like, okay, well, is this a bad goal? And I hate using the word bad, but I will say that it could be weak. So weak goals are often similar to process goals, right? That sounds like figuring things out or talking about what happened or dealing with emotions. These are processes. It's not a goal. A real goal carries the risk of failure. If your goal can't fail, then it's not a real goal. Tension, which we are always a big fan of, that is born from the possibility that the objective might not be reached. So, what do we do with all of this? Waha! You do what I tell you to do all the time, which is get specific. So, I want you to upgrade your scene goals. It's very vague if your scene goal is talk to him. Who's him? Why are we talking? For what purpose? Instead, specific goal would be to convince him to stay. That's a different conversation, right? If you're just saying talk to him, well, you didn't tell me what I was supposed to talk about. So maybe I'm going to talk to him about the fact that I lost my favorite pen. Has nothing to do with the scene, has nothing to do with the plot, but you just said talk to him is the goal. But when we have a specific goal and convince him to stay, now we have a little bit of a mission, right? And another vague scene goal would be just investigate. Cool, investigate what? Is this a direction to your detective character? Investigate. Nothing else. Context matters, specificity matters. Instead of the vague goal, you can say, you need to find the missing money from the fair. There was a heist, and you need to figure out where that money went. You always want to ask, what does success look like in this scene? If you can answer that clearly, your scene definitely has direction. All right, let's go back to our layering. Remember, we want to create a scene goal stack. Say that 5 times fast. You can stack your goals like your external goal, which is what they are doing physically, with your internal goal, which is what they need emotionally, and then their hidden goal, which is what they won't admit. When you create this delicious little stack, then conflict becomes so much more interesting because the goals are clashing internally. For example, your character wants to get the job, okay? But she wants to get the job to prove her worth, but she's trying desperately not to look desperate. That's going to be kind of a fun scene to write. We have layers, we have a lot going on there. Next, we have the way this relates to conflict. So, a goal without opposition is just a summary, it is not a scene. Conflict exists specifically to block goals and to create uncertainty. If there is zero resistance, if there is no scene there, you need to ask yourself who or what is pushing back. Why can't this be easy? The difficulty of the goal is what reveals the character's true strength. So I think writers often think that stakes, again, only matter during the climax, but for a scene to be, immersive and gripping, there needs to be some sort of immediate consequence for failure. So if the character fails to achieve their specific scene goal, what is the immediate penalty? Does the trail go cold? Maybe they're hunting down the killer. They did not achieve the goal of getting the cell phone and getting all the data off of the cell phone. So, what happens if they don't do that? That was their only clue. Does the trail go cold? What happens if you didn't have the conversation with your potential relationship partner that you needed to have that was going to resolve this conflict between you? Does that relationship fracture then? If the stakes of a scene feel low, I want you to consider amping it up a little bit. Maybe you need to add a time limit or make the failure of that micro goal more personal to the protagonist. We want high stakes, even on a smaller scale. With this, every scene must end with change, whether it is success with consequences, outright failure, or a partial success that creates a new problem. The key is not really about winning. It is about whether or not the situation is different. So if the situation is the same at the end of the chapter as it was at the beginning of the chapter, did your scenes really kind of earn their place? No, I have no idea what just happened. If it's everything's the same at the beginning as it was at the end, what is the actual purpose of all of these scenes in this chapter? So here is a quick little checklist of things you can ask yourself about your scenes if you're feeling like that maybe some of them need a little bit of adjusting. Question number 1, what does my character want right now? Do you know? If I'm writing a romance and I'm writing a date, okay, they're going to go to the museum. It is their first date. This is will, second chance romance or something. What does my character want right now from the date? They want connection. They might be a little bit nervous, so they want we're dealing with some anticipation. They want this person back if they were previously in a relationship. What is in the way? Well, the last time they were in a relationship was 15 years ago. They don't really know, you know, who this new version of this person is. They are at the museum, but they're having to live in this moment. So what happens because of that? Well, they're nervous. They might fumble their words. They might get really awkward. It could be a maybe they don't recognize them. That would be really funny, actually. I would really enjoy writing that. They have had this crush forever, but then they finally get the date and they don't recognize them because they don't know who they are anymore. What changes moving forward? It's going to change how they relate to each other. At the if the situation is the same at the end of the chapter, the scene didn't earn it. So if at the end of this chapter where this museum date happens, if they're still feeling the same level of awkwardness and they're still feeling like they don't recognize this person and they just want to get to know them, I haven't done my job, right? My scenes have not moved us along. They have not met their goals. All right, I know y'all like examples, so let's do an example of this. Um, this is a very flat scene, so I'll read it for uh, everyone. It says, I sat in the mess hall of the Zoltan, watching the simulated starlight flicker. My hands felt cold, a lingering side effect of the Cairo sleep. Kodiak sat down across from me, his flight suit stained with engine grease. We talked for a while about the old colony on Mars and how much the air filtration systems had improved since the Great Collapse. He looked tired, and I felt the weight of the 3 million miles still ahead of us. Eventually, he stood up, nodded, and left me alone with my cooling caffeine synth. Okay, so this is filler. While the prose does establish some atmosphere, the character is passive. They're just talking about what happened or processing emotions. There is no goal here, there is no tension. The reader has no reason to keep turning the page, right? We're just observing, sitting, drinking some coffee, and talking about air filtration systems. We need a goal. Okay, this is an after version. I hung back until the mess hall had cleared out. Kodiak was the only tech left on the rotation with level 6 clearance, and I hated that it had to be him. When he finally slumped into the booth, smelling of burnt ozone and stale engine grease, I knew I had to speak quickly or lose my nerve. I know about the energy redirects, Kodiak, I whispered, sliding my data pad across the table, and that sure looks like your signature on the bypass logs. Kodiak studied me, his face a perfectly blank slate. Of course he wouldn't make this easy. I took in a deep breath. Give me the Section 4 override, or the captain gets the logs delivered immediately. He looked at the pad, then back at me, his eyes narrowing in thought. After an excruciating moment, he pressed his thumb to the sensor and authorized the transfer. Traitors get theirs, he growled before standing. Okay, we still have some scene work to do here, but look at what we have done compared to the flat scene. Is this more interesting? is there something else going on that's not just talking about air filtration, right? There's an active goal. The protagonist is not just waiting around for something to happen. They have a specific measurable objective. They need the Section 4 override. There is a clear obstacle here. Kodiak, it feels like there might be a friendship there of some kind, and he clearly is at odds with giving this information. We also have some internal guilt happening from the protagonist standpoint that's kind of clashing with the external necessity of the mission. He needs this information, but he feels bad about it. Or they actually. The outcome changes the story. So the character got whatever the codes were. They got their override, but it feels like with this ending statement that they may have sacrificed a relationship to do so. So when Kodiak calls them a traitor, that status quo is now shattered. This is very interesting. This has scene goals. All right, let's try it. I am going to put 60 seconds. So 1 minute. Do do do. There we go. On the clock. I want you to rewrite this very vague goal. He goes to confront his boss. Make it specific and high stakes. You can do this, and you can put your answers in the comments if you want to, or just follow along at home. Ten seconds. All right. So you could turn this into, he goes to confront his boss to force a confession regarding the stolen funds. Maybe there's an embezzlement plotline. Or he goes to confront his boss to stop himself from being fired after a mistake. Either of those have a little bit more teeth in the scene, right? It's the goal is sharper. Okay. So here's another tip is you want to ensure that your scene goals feel like stepping stones toward or away from the main story goal. So even if the connection is indirect, the reader should feel that this specific moment kind of matters in the grander scheme of things. This alignment kind of prevents wandering subplots and does keep your narrative more focused on the finish line. Not every You can still have the fun, quirky scenes sprinkled in there, but this is just something to keep in mind as you are drafting, that as you are coming up with these scene goals and as you're thinking about what these scenes do for your overall story, and maybe you're doing this while in your editing process. Maybe you drafted we'll get it all out of your head, and now we are going through scene by scene to decide if it is necessary, and you're trying to figure out those scene goals then. Make sure, though, that you are supporting what the overarching story goal is. If my second chance romance with the museum date, if the goal is to be able to forgive each other for why they broke up in the first place, however many years ago, and start over and find this enduring love and, you know, build a life together, if that's my overall story goal, then my scene goals need to help support that end goal. Does that make sense? I've said goal like too many times. I hope it does. So that's what we're looking for is we're looking to link to our story goal with our scene goals. Right. As a final note here, so if you can manage to fix your scene goals, you are fixing your story. Mastering this single craft skill results in better pacing, stronger tension, and more compelling characters who feel alive because they are driven by purpose. It is honestly one of the highest impact changes you can make to your manuscript. Pay attention to what your scenes are doing. So, I would like to send you off into the world with this. Figure out what your characters want. That is what I want you to do, and then work on your scene goals. If this was a useful little mini workshop for you, please do subscribe. I do these mini workshops semi regularly, and share this with a writer who needs it today because it is World Storytelling Day and stories deserve to be told well. Don't forget to join in the festivities that we have going on all day long. We have our calendar of events are available inside of AutoCrit, or if you go to this website right here, you can sign up to be notified. Thank you so much for joining me for this series. If you're ready to take the next step in your writing journey, I highly encourage you to check out the full range of courses and workshops available at AutoCrit. You can also go back through this playlist and look at the other mini workshops that are included as part of our celebration for World Storytelling Week. Once again, my name is Bekah Brinkmeier, and I am an author coach here at AutoCrit. Thank you again for spending some time with me today, and happy writing.